Your cybersecurity and online privacy have never been more at risk. You're tuned in to Tea Time now. Here's your host, Sara Spencer.
Hey everybody, I'm Sara Spencer, and welcome to this Tea Time series on security management, the act of the security program, and I want to go through that A to Z. But before we get into the technical controls and how to properly implement a secure cloud environment, which we will, and I'll give you a demo on how I did it, including putting the web application firewall, the WAF, in front of the firewall so that you can log all the traffic, and then setting up the environment for internal routes so that you can route the traffic back through the firewall. So in your internal environment, if server A wants to get to server B, it has to go through the firewall. And that's how we're going to capture our logging for monitoring. So when we're talking about step one, and let me just give you some background on my experience. I was a Unix systems administrator at 21, 22. And then I went into, but by the way, my schooling was in networking. So Electronic Arts trained me in Unix. Anyway, I had my own consulting business, so I touched all the technologies. And that's where I really learned the most and where I was most challenged. Because if you don't figure it out, you don't get paid. And sometimes, like at the 11th hour, serendipitously, I would come across some vendor information if you didn't have a support contract, and like, oh my gosh, I saved the day. But anyway, I got into security implementation in 2013, which is ISO information security management systems for medical device and clinical vaccination companies. Anyway, then fast forward to Cisco. I was a senior information architect and subject matter expert in data center and networking vulnerability management. And so there, I didn't do as much implementation as I did managing the program and making improvements to the program. And then of course with my SME position, I provided tier 4 support to engineers on the technology that they were trying to secure. So that's a little bit of background about me. And then the last 5 years, I've been assessing, implementing, and auditing companies for security controls. And then I'm a service provider. So I too have been getting audited by my customers' vendors as part of their third management process. So that's why I'm going to share my cloud configuration with you, because I've gotten a lot of compliments with all of those audits on my design and controls. So we'll go through that. But first, we're going to talk about step one. Everybody wants to go out and get a SOC 2 certification or a HIPAA High Trust certification or implement NIST controls or implement this or implement that. Okay, and so when I assess a company or audit a company, one of the first things I try to do when I'm doing the context of the organization and trying to figure out interested parties is what are the competence levels of these interested parties? Because that tells me a couple of things. If the security program is poorly implemented, it could be a number of internal issues. But what I find being the number one issue with implementing a security program is competency in risk management. So when we're implementing these controls, like we say cybersecurity, we say information security, we say GRC, we say all these things, okay? But from an enterprise risk management, or if we want to call it cybersecurity, fine, but it has to be a top-down approach or it fails. Like there's no shortcut. So I always recommend to implement that management system. And if you have multiple management systems, let's say you have a quality assurance management, say you have information security management, business continuity management, you name it, let's integrate these management systems, because even though we're testing some of the technical controls within this management system framework, and I'm just going to say ISO 27001, ISO 9001, ISO 22301, right? And if I got any of those wrong, I'm sorry. But if we're implementing any of these management systems, we're starting with governance. We're starting with how do we communicate to the organization that this is what we do, this is how we do it, and how do we improve on that and make sure that we're doing it, right? So that's policies, processes, and communication and training. So I create an information security policy. It talks about all my remote working, my clear desk, my encryption, my MFA, my EDR, whatever policies that we want to have in this information security policy, right? We create this policy, and then we're going to communicate it to the organization, and we're going to ask them to read, understand this policy or process. That simple. Okay, so we've done that. Now we want to provide user awareness and training on the what, the why, and the how. So if we have, let's say, a policy on multi-factor authentication, and we need users to know how to onboard and make sure that their multi-factor authentication is working, but we also need them to understand about MFA fatigue and how to update their information so that they can do self-password reset. All right, user awareness and training. All right, so we have our policies, that's part of our framework. Now, we really have to dig deep into those procedures and that business continuity and that risk assessment and opportunities for improvement and review and monitoring and incident response. And I could probably go on and on for days, right? You get my point. And this is why, before going to SOC 2, let's make sure we know how to manage this. Let's make sure that we know what agenda items we need to go over with the top management committee and the board of directors so that they understand in their language what the threat to the organization is, so they can make informed decisions. But we start doing all of this piecemeal. Oh, somebody said I need a VPN. Somebody said I need an EDR. Somebody said I need this. Somebody said I need that. And before you know it, nobody knows what anybody's doing. And I guarantee you, if I ask the employees what they think would happen if the worst case scenario happened, they would say fail. We would fail. So that's why I recommend putting a management system in place. I'm not telling you not to implement controls first. Like, of course, if you need anti-malware and you need an EDR and you need all of these things, sure, plan it, put it. But do you have change management? That's another question. Where's the source code? Where's password control? How are we reviewing these accounts? How are we making sure that there's no, right? The list just, I mean, we could talk about security all day and we wouldn't get to 100% security, because it's a cycle and we're on this journey and there's never a destination. But if we make a hard outside and have a squishy inside, we're seeing what's going on with China, right? We're saying, hey, they're already in our critical infrastructure. Yeah, we knew this. But the problem is, A, people misinterpret the standard or the control, or we have an auditor that doesn't understand this or that, or it's a money grab. I mean, we can go on and on about why we struggle so much with these basic things, and then experience levels and the lack of experts in the market right now. I've already been offered like 5 jobs this year. So I just want to say, like, it's worth it to do the policies, the communication, the user awareness and training and those procedures. Like, if that's the first thing that you do, and like, of course, use MFA, please, and strong passwords, and like the basic things that we're asking you to do, that do not take any resources, that are transparent to users for the most part. Like, one of my pet peeves is VPNs, okay? You have to use a VPN if you're working from home or if you're working in a hotel. If I get another virus call or a malware call because somebody was in a hotel and God knows where, ordering a book for Christmas for his wife at Barnes and Noble, and their whole computer got hacked. And like, hey, dude, I've been telling you like for years, you have to put a VPN on this computer. Okay, so we want to say that our customers are so unique. They have all of these different unique ways, the way they do things. Yes, most of the time it's lack of risk management competency. And it's an excuse for why their cybersecurity program or security program or information security program or risk management program or enterprise risk management program is a mess. So let's go back a little bit and talk about the introduction to information security. Why are we doing information security? Why are we doing business continuity? The reason we do those things is to make sure that we're in line with regulatory, compliance, and contractual obligations, because you know, when you do the RTO, like recovery time objective, right, and you try to do this over time, people know that their customers will be okay with a certain amount of time. So they stretch that. They're like, hey, if this happened for X amount of days, X amount of hours, forget the SLAs, it is what it is, the customers will be fine. So we're not implementing this. Of course, we're implementing this for the customer, okay? Yes, we want the customer's data to be secure. But it's because those regulatory bodies and those compliance frameworks that we have implemented and those business requirements, which are those, you know, internal and external issues, the context of the organization, the complex of the organization, how big the organization is, the competency level of the organization, the maturity of the organization. So all of these things, not really being created equal, we have to say, we better be in line with those regulatory compliance and contractual agreements. Let's start there. Let's find out what the biggest risk to the organization is, whether it's on the business side, the context of those internal and external factors. Let's take into the control of like incidents that have already happened, vulnerabilities, and then we'll be able to make a better informed decision on the security program maturity or next steps. I don't even know if what I just said made sense, because I forgot why I was even bringing up all of those things. But anyway, so that's the management framework, right? We're managing the incident response, the business continuity, all of the training, competency, opportunities for improvement, notifying the board, tracking vulnerabilities, so vulnerability management, tracking incidences, communication plans, also those external organizations that we need to make sure that we're part of and we get our information from, third-party risk, supplier risk. I know I didn't mention it except for me getting audited a lot, but I mean, I'm coming after you on competence and third-party risk all the time. And then availability. Like, redundancy. Like, we're in a day and age where that backup better not be on that machine. And honestly, if your operations are critical and you're going to bring the entire operation down because a controller got breached, for example, and we can just imagine what's on top of the controller. It doesn't really matter. But if it's a core critical controller, then we know the end result. So we got to have redundancy. And so that's the episode for today. We did this really fast in 15 minutes. I hope you followed along. Let me know if you have any questions.